let's talk real quick about like kind of what we're doing. So here, I want to tell you the theory why we're kind of working. So this is our next assignment, okay? So this is synthesizing. So tell me, what do you know, like what does synthesizing mean, or what does synthesis mean to you? To synthesize something, what does that mean? Synthesize, not sync. If you synthesize information, what does that mean? Y'all can put your computers away now.
You absorb it.
You absorb it and do what with it? If something is synthesized, what does that mean? Okay, so we clearly have no idea.
I got halfway.
Kind of. So synthesizing means that you're creating something new from stuff that is already there. Okay? So synthesis is this. So I told you, like, you know, at the beginning of the year, I told you, like, each question has a purpose. So for me, the idea of our synthesis question is where you're given an argument, and then you're given like 5 to 7 documents, and you have to look at those documents and create an opinion. So the purpose of this question, synthesis, is to show the reader, the College Board reader, that you can know like nothing about a topic. You could be given evidence that shows both sides of an opinion, and you can come out the other side with your own opinion based in fact. Okay? So you'll see synthesis. You guys are already writing, are y'all writing DBQs already in APUSH? No? Okay, so you will be writing a DBQ soon. So DBQ is much like our synthesis, where you are given a topic, you're given sources, and then you have to kind of argue your opinion using the sources, right? So the difference between us and APUSH is that we want more of you than we want the source. So this is a skill that we really work on quite a bit. We work on the essay itself in the spring, but I feel like we need to kind of learn some little steps along the way. So we created this assignment to kind of help you to synthesize information, okay? So it's going to be a little bit different thinking than rhetorical analysis, and you guys have to understand that for everything you write, there is a different purpose. So there may be a different style, there may be a different purpose, so you have to figure out what that is going in, okay? And we'll talk about the differences of rhetorical analysis and what we're doing now, okay? But know that everything we do is an argument, right? So when you're writing a rhetorical analysis, you're trying to argue to me how you view the language, right? Same thing with argument. You have to explain to me how you view your position. Same thing for synthesis. You have to argue with me what you see and how you view it, okay? So let's jump in. All right, so, and I know the boxes are small, so just write small and hang in there. So, many people advocate changes in society. This has led to questions about the value of change. Some advocate changes in American social or political attitudes, while others believe in holding on to traditions. Okay, so what this first paragraph is this is background information. So the background information is unbiased and gives you an idea of what the topic is. So obviously our topic is the idea of change. That's our topic. All right. So now this is our assignment, not necessarily the task, because the task is inside there, but this is our assignment. Carefully read the source provided and find one additional article about a current event. This article must take the same position on change as the source provided. Then synthesize information from the two sources and incorporate it into a coherent, well-developed paragraph that argues your position on the extent to which change can create progress. All right, so your assignment is in there, but your task is actually your writing task. So what am I asking you to write about? Where is your task? What am I asking you to write about? Not how I'm asking you to write it, but what am I asking you to write about? Not two sources. The extent to which, yes, right here. The extent to which change can create progress. That is your task. So let's talk about if this is an argument and what does the extent to which mean? Yeah. How much it's true. Yeah, absolutely. So you have options. You can say, yes, it is. You can say, no, it doesn't. Or you can say, it does in these circumstances. Or you can say, no, it doesn't, but it only in these circumstances, right? So the extent to which gives you some wiggle room. Today, we are just going to look at one side of it. I don't want us to get into saying, yes, it does, but it doesn't here. We're going to get into, not get into, the arguing of both sides right now. Okay, so what we're going to flip to the back real fast. So change can create progress. So write that on the back. So inherently in this, change can create progress. We're saying that it does, right? Could you argue and say change does not create progress in this prompt? Yeah, because the extent to which allows you to say, is it true or is it not true? Okay, so first of all, we need to break down the prompt. So what does change mean? Okay, to alter. To alter something, right? What does progress mean? Improve. Okay, so let's talk about ways that we can see change. So what types of change can occur? Speaking broadly, what type of changes can occur? Okay, so there could be a physical change. And then we would have to look at, where's the progress, right? We would have to define that eventually. What other kind of changes can there be? Okay.
Leadership.
Okay. Okay, I would say environmental, yeah. With leadership, do you mean like politics?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we could say political. There could be a political change. There could be an environmental change. What else? Mm-hmm. Cultural, I think, is also kind of like societal, right? Okay, so notice that our prompt, our idea of change is very broad, right? If I wanted to be specific, I could say that the extent to which political change can create progress. Then you would be very narrowed in what you had to talk about. Does that make sense? So here, because it is so broad, you get to define it whatever way you want to define it. Okay? But what you have to make sure is that you either prove that it does create progress or that it doesn't. So, let's think of examples in history where some kind of change has occurred. Okay, so what kind of change are we making there with an American Revolution? Okay, so we could have political change. And our proof would be the American Revolution. And what kind of progress was made? Okay, so because of that, we gained our freedom. Or independence. Okay, so do you see where we're going with that? So notice we have to kind of dig into different types. So today, what we're going to work with, and now I'm flipping back over to the front. what we are going to work with is we are going to work with Patrick Henry. So when it says up here, carefully read the source provided. So for us today, we're using Patrick Henry. And we have carefully read it. Okay? We spent 3 days on it. All right? So now we have to answer the question. Now this, when we're talking about argument or we're talking about synthesizing, we need it to be clear and concise, which means I need a position. So, if we're keeping Patrick Henry in the back of our mind, do we believe that his change created progress? Okay, so our answer will say change does create progress. So notice the extent to which change can create, and we're saying yes, it can create it. It does create progress. Right? Now, if you wanted to, you could here define it even more and say change does create political progress. You don't have to, but you can. Okay. So now this is where I'm going to stop and explain a little difference of what we're doing and the rhetorical analysis that we've been doing and what we're doing now. So when we talk about rhetorical analysis and I say, okay, you have a thesis and an assertion in your chunk. What is the first thing that comes in your chunk? I said it has to be this. What's the first thing that has to come in your chunk? Embedded evidence, your language, right? It has to come first. Because in rhetorical analysis papers, your job is to prove to the reader that you understand the value of language. So how do you understand that? You have to put it first and then you analyze it. Okay? For an argument question, which is what this is, you have to prove to me that you understand the world and then go, this is what I understand about the world, and oh, P.S., by the way, here's a great example of it. So notice how our chunk is changing a little bit. Here we say, how is this proven true in history? This is your own opinion and your own thought. And then you say, here's the evidence that proves that. Does that make sense? So we're flip-flopping. We're almost kind of tricking the reader. So I'll tell you why I think this is true. This summer when I read our test, I read for the synthesis essay, which is kind of what we're doing, right? So what happens is when I was reading, and I would read a chunk of evidence from somebody, I would read the evidence first, and then what came after it, I felt a lot of times was just summary, right? So we're almost tricking the reader into thinking, we don't need summary, we're going to put our big idea first, and then go, oh, P.S., by the way, look at this great piece of evidence that I found in the source. But I'm putting our opinion first. Does that make sense? So that's the reason why they're working out of order. Now that I have you thoroughly confused, we're going to start with the piece of evidence first, and put the piece of evidence in first, and then go back and say, what are we proving? Okay? So, pull out your Patrick Henry, your passage. Okay. So I'm going to jot down some kind of big ideas. So let's think big, right? So we know that there's going to be some kind of change that Henry is trying to prove to us. So what do you think the big idea is? What is it that is happening to the colonists that is driving Patrick Henry to make this change? Like, what are the colonists feeling? What are they doing? Okay, so there's betrayal, and I'm just jotting down some ideas here. What else are they feeling from the crown? They're what? So oppression, overbearing, yes, so oppression. Okay. So notice what I do this a lot when I write. I jot down some of my ideas and then I'll formulate them into like a sentence, right? Okay. So what progress was made? So betrayal, oppression, restriction leads to what? We have basically kind of like two things that we could do, right? So in that kind of a society, we can either one, do what? Fight. Or we could to do what? Back down. Okay, so that's the direction that we're going. So now that we kind of have this big idea, go into Patrick Henry and find for me the best piece of evidence that shows this oppression from the government, from the crown. What is the best piece of evidence that you think Henry provides that shows the amount of oppression, i.e. betrayal also, that we have experienced, the colonists have experienced? What parts do you think?
He describes them as tyrannical.
Okay, give me the quote.
To arrest the tyrannical hands of the ministry and the parliament.
Okay. Does that show the oppression? The amount of oppression? It suggests oppression, yes.
Like just before that line, he says, "Sir, we have done everything that we could to be done to avert this harm which is not coming. We have petitioned, we have remonstrated, we have supplicated, we have prostrated ourselves before the throne, and have implored its interposition to arrest the tyrannical hands of the ministry of parliament."
Okay.
And the next lines are like, "Our petitions have been slighted, our remonstrances have produced additional violence and insult, and our supplications have been disregarded." So like everything they try just gets like squandered by the throne.
Okay, so I like the verbs in that, right? Like listing all the things that we have done. So are we okay using that quote? Okay, so let's do this. So now we got to embed our text. And notice that I'm going to skip the proven true in history, and we're going to kind of go back, right? Okay, so we're going to the embedded text part. So we have to embed it with context. So in his speech to the Virginia, and I'm sorry the boxes are so small, National Convention, Patrick Henry. Okay, so we have to find a good marker verb to talk about. We don't want to say says or shows, you know, let's kind of leave a blank there. He's doing something about the many failed attempts, right? The many failed attempts. Okay, so let's kind of stop there because then we're going to have to go into the actual passage. So Patrick Henry, what's a good marker verb there? So remember in your yellow pages, you have those, like, it's the tone words, and then on the second page of the tone words, there's the verbs for literary analysis. That's where I would be looking. So let's find a good verb that talks about what Patrick Henry is doing. I want something more than shows or illustrates. That what? Enumerates would work for me. What else? That's not strong enough. But but is he advocating? He's trying to list. I like the idea of enumerates. I think that would work. Is that a verb? Enumerates? Yes. Enumerates. So Patrick Henry enumerates the many failed attempts by the colonists that have Okay, now I need those, Nick, in order. That have, what have they done? What's the first verb? They have...
Petitioned.
Okay, so petitioned. So notice, if you were going to rhetorically analyze this, you would have the whole passage, or those lines, because the parallelism in there is strong, the verbs are strong, the semicolon is there strong. But so right now, for our purpose, I just need the verbs. Okay, so you would not do this with rhetorical analysis because the language is more than just the verbs. There's more in there, so you want to give yourself more to analyze. So, but here I'm going to use the ellipses, that they have petitioned. What else? What's the next one?
Remonstrated.
Remonstrated, ellipses. Okay.
Supplicated.
Okay.
And those are the three main ones.
And then it gets to prostrated, right?
Yeah.
But there's a semicolon in between, right?
Yeah.
Because they're constantly being disciplined.
Okay, so their freedoms, okay, so an oppressive society where people feel like their freedoms have been taken away. As many revolutions have proven, you're going to kill me. As many revolutions have proven, people living in an oppressive society feel like their freedoms have been taken away. And let's go to this other idea. These people can either choose to back down or fight against the, let's say, oppressors. Because sometimes it's not necessarily the government, right? Okay, so listen to what we have said. So the question is, argue the extent to which change can create progress. So here's our answer. Change does create progress. As many revolutions have proven, people living in an oppressive society feel like their freedoms have been taken away. These people can either choose to back down or fight against the oppressors. In a speech to the Virginia National Convention, Patrick Henry enumerates the many failed attempts by the colonists that have petitioned, remonstrated, supplicated, and prostrated themselves before the crown. Now, we need to go back in and have another sentence that now says, now what have we proven? Now, what have they done? What are they doing? What was the outcome? Because these colonists united and fought against the crown. What did they get? They were rewarded with their independence. Okay, hot dog. So do you see how we got the idea for how's it proven true in society, or proven true in history, from thinking about what we're using with Patrick Henry? Yes? Okay. So your job tonight is I'm going to allow you to use these parts. So you can type this into your document. Now what you have to do is you have to go and find how is this same idea proven true in society. So you have to go find a current event. And now current, you guys, I'm going to allow you to go back maybe even to the 50s or 60s, right? So talking about like the civil rights movement, you can go in there. Any civil rights issues now, any kind of oppression you see happening now where there is oppression and people are trying to rise up against it. Now what we want for now is we want an outcome that is the same, or a prediction of an outcome that could be the same. Does that make sense? So what I need for you to do in your small groups the last like 15 minutes, 13 minutes, is to find an article that supports the same idea. Show me that you know how to research well. I need valid sources. I need Time Magazine, The New Yorker, New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, MSNBC. Try to stay away. I think, salon.com is a website, but in my head when I hear salon.com, I think I'm going to be reading about the Kardashians as I'm getting my hair done. Okay, so I don't know if that's necessarily like a valid web source or a website, right? Wall Street Journal would be good too, right? So start thinking of these ideas. And so what you need to come in with tomorrow as a group, now remember I want you to share your Google Doc with your group so you all can work together, is this next chunk. So what I would do is I would start with your embedded piece of evidence first and then work your way back. Here you need to make a connection of what's happening currently and what this is saying up here. And make a connection. So this is going to kind of transition your idea into your embedded text again. And then notice you're going to try these last couple of sentences. So you're going to do what we just did, but you're going to extend it now, right? And then notice your last sentence says, now that these two things are suggested above have been proven true, what does this say about our society in general? Because this is true, what is this saying about humanity? What is this saying about society? Right? That's what I want you to work on tonight. It may not be great, right? This part down here, this last part may not be great. The embedding text and your connections need to be strong. Okay? That's what I want you to work on tonight. I would say for now, don't worry about